Hello. Good evening, madam.
A pleasant evening to all. Dear participants, a pleasant evening to all of you. On behalf of the management of JMG College for Women Tenali, I, Dr. Sister Amul Mary, the head of the Department of Computer Science, gladly welcome you all. Gladly welcome you all for this one-week national webinar cum FDP on history and its relevance to present scenario from 26 October to 1st November 2023. Before we commence the second day session, let us raise our hearts and minds in prayer, seeking blessings from God, the Creator, through prayer song.
Lord, I offer my life to you, everything I've been through. Use it for your glory, and Lord, I offer my days to you, lifting my praise to you as a pleasing sacrifice. Lord, I offer you my life. Sing it. Lord, I offer my life to you, everything I've been through. Use it for your glory, and Lord, I offer my days to you, lifting my praise to you as a pleasing sacrifice. Lord, I offer you my life. Things in the past, things yet unseen, wishes and dreams that are yet to come true. All of my hopes and all of my plans, my heart and my hands are lifted to you. Lord,
Dear participants, before we start the session, I would like to give a few instructions. Please mute your audio and video throughout the webinar in order to avoid inconveniences. If you have any queries during the session, Please post your queries in chat box. The queries and questions will be clarified at the end of the session. Thank you for your kind cooperation. As we begin the session, a cordial welcome to Dr. Sister Teresa Magade, the correspondent of our college, and Dr. Sister Shaini, the principal. The today's resource person, Dr. Sujata from Mumbai, and all the participants. A warm welcome to this webinar cum faculty development program organized by the Department of History, J&J College for Women, Tenali. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce today's resource person, Dr. Sujata, who will be discussing on the topic History of Gender and Education in India. Dr. Sujata Devarapalli currently teaches in Advanced Center for Women's Studies. She has MA in History, MPhil and PhD from University of Hyderabad. She specialized in socio-cultural and ethnic history of marginal communities in South India and published many research papers in edited books and journals on intersectionality of caste and gender. Prior to TISS. She was with Anveshi, Women's Studies Research Center, Hyderabad. As a research fellow at Anveshi, Devrapalli has done an extensive study on the role of Dalit women in rural political structure, funded by HIVO's Netherlands. Another research study on inter and intra-caste violence and Dalit women titled Dalit Women and Domestic Violence was done for Oxfam India with collaboration of Anveshi Women's Studies Research Center. A research paper based on the study was published in Economic and Political Weekly 2014. Popular performance and social change was another study conducted with Dr. Simon Charsley, a well-known sociologist from University of Scotland, funded by ESRC UK. The study focused on the shifting nature of traditional performance in AP and the contemporary socio-economic conditions of performers in general and women performers in particular. She worked as assistant professor cum assistant director in the Center for Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy from 2009 to 2012, SK University. She also contributed to some of the translations of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar writings and speeches from English to Telugu. She is currently working on a project funded by UNICEF on gender transformative program in Maharashtra. Ma'am, with a great appreciation and admiration for your knowledge and experience, I now invite you to enlighten the participants. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jyoti, for your nice words and for the introduction. So, can we start now? Or,
Yeah, we
is
shall
there
start.
any question over Dr. Jyoti?
Ma'am, no, you can start now.
Okay. So, can you share the PPT, ma'am?
Yeah, PPT, we shall say. Yeah, we are going to share.
Thank you. Thank you. So today's topic is history of gender and education in Indian history and the journey of women and education and how these two actually emerged and underwent a lot of tremendous change in 19th and 20th century. This we will start with this, and then we will discuss about feminist discourse on gender and education, and also the contribution of several social reformers who contributed for the women and education in India. So, starting with the 19th century, contemporary educational system, which is actually, you all know, is a legacy of British colonialism. And particularly the 19th century saw the emergence of women's education and as a significant issue in colonial India. It witnessed the setting up of the educational institutions for women by the British government and the native social reformers.
Excuse me,
As
ma'am.
a result, yeah,
Will
yes,
you raise your voice little more?
okay.
Yeah.
So, as a result, both women and education experienced tremendous change in the late 19th century. The reformative policies of the colonial state and native social reformers encouraged modern education system to challenge the existing oppressive norms in society. During the early 19th century, several Christian missionary societies, such as the Church Missionary Society and the London Missionary Society, established schools and missions in various parts of India. These missionaries believed that education was a means to spread Christianity and at the same time to improve the social and educational conditions of the people in India. So, the education of girls was initially met with resistance in many parts of India due to traditional societal norms and practices. However, Christian missionaries actively promoted women's education and they established schools for girls as a part of their mission activities. The first of such schools for girls is believed to have been established in 1819 in West Bengal by Hannah Marchman, the wife of missionary Joshua Marchman. These missionary schools for girls played a crucial role in breaking the barriers to female education in India and contributed to the broader educational and social reforms that took place during the 19th century. Over time, they paved the way for the development of a more inclusive and diverse educational system in India, which eventually led to the spread of education for girls across the country. It is also important to know that while Christian missionaries were instrumental in the early efforts to provide education for girls in India, the movement for female education in the country involved multiple stakeholders and underwent significant changes over the years, including the involvement of Indian reformers and later native government initiatives. Before discussing the debates on women and education, we will look at the social condition of 19th century and what are the issues and challenges faced by women in 19th century. So in 19th century, as you know, childhood, as a concept also, it was not existing for the women in India because it was often, one of the, because of the early child marriages that are mostly prevalent and girls were often married off at a very young age, sometimes even before puberty. So this had a profound impact on their lives as they were expected to assume adult roles and responsibilities, including those related to the household and family. So they were taught to be obedient and subservient, and their aspirations and autonomy were often curtailed. So the 19th century in India was marked by a very rigid patriarchal society where women had limited rights and were often subject to the authority and decisions of male family members such as fathers, husbands, and brothers. So women were often expected to adhere to strict social norms and codes of conduct. They had to observe Pada in many regions, which further restricted their public interactions. There were limited opportunities for women to participate in public life, pursue careers, or engage in activities outside the home. Their social mobility and economic mobility were also constrained. The practice of sati, where widows were expected to self-immolate on their husband's funeral pyre, was still prevalent in some regions during the 19th century, and widowhood was often associated with stigma and hardship, and widows had limited rights and opportunities. With the emergence of social reform movement, a tremendous change occurred in the lives of women in India, particularly middle class upper caste women benefited by this social reform movement. The social reform movement played a very significant role in advocating for the education of women and challenging traditional norms that limited their access to education. This movement can be traced back to the 19th and early 20th centuries and was closely intertwined with various reform movements that sought to address social issues and promote equality. So several social reformers like, you all know Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Jyotirao Phule, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, Ranade, Pandit Ramabai, Rokia Begum. There are several social reformers who advocated for women's education in that period. They believed that educating women was essential for the overall progress and development of society. Mahatma Phule was one of the early social reformers, to articulate the importance of educating women and Shudras as a means of empowering them. Phule had the most radical ideas on educating women. He considered that men had kept women in an unenlightened state in order to preserve their own superiority. So, in order to preserve their own superiority, men had kept women in an unenlightened state. So, Phule viewed education of the Shudras and Ati Shudra community as an essential from the point of view of social justice. So, he called education as a Tritiya Ratna, a third A, which symbolizes supreme knowledge or eternal knowledge. So in 1882, when Mahatma Phule prepared a memorandum addressing Education Commission, which is also known as Hunter Commission, in which he stressed on three important issues. First one is an immediate need to focus on primary education. Second is a requirement of non-Brahmin teachers, and third is importance of women's education. So the first one is focus on primary education. So Mahatma Phule and other social reformers strongly felt that there is a need to focus mainly on primary education and requirement of non-primary teachers, because they are suspecting about the sincerity, honesty of Brahmin teachers who are willing to teach all. So they were demanding that there is a strong requirement of non-Brahmin teacher who will be able to teach all, irrespective of caste, class, and gender, who will be able to teach all. So there is a requirement of such teachers. And the third is importance of women's education. So government should take necessary steps to develop, to encourage women's education. So these 3 points were mainly put forwarded by Mahatma Phule in his memorandum while he was addressing education commission. So he along with his wife Savitribai Phule also established several schools for girls, and also inspired their students to think critically and advocate for social reform. So not only they established the schools for girls and downtrodden children, but they also incline their the very rationality of students. So they were very much particular about the rationality to encourage the rational thinking of students. So as a so they were very much encouraging the students to critically think and advocate for social reform. So an essay written by one of his student, Mukta Salve, who was actually studied in Satrabai school, reflects foolish influence on their students. So if you look at Mukta Salve's essay, in her essay, Mukta Salve questions the Brahmanical injunctions that prevented the imparting of textual knowledge to Shudras and Atishudras. So she also highlighted the challenges faced by Dalit women and stressed the importance of education for liberation of Shudras and Atishudras. So this essay of Mukta Salve not only demonstrates critical thinking, but also it gives a deep understanding of the link between education and empowerment, which aligns with Mahatma Phule's views. So similarly, there is another social reformer like Gopal Hari Deshmukh, who is also known as Lokhitvadi, who is a prominent social reformer and also journalist during that time, known for his significant contributions to the social and religious reforms in the country, particularly in the context of women's rights and the treatment of widows within the Brahmanical tradition. And he actually criticized the position of women within the Brahmanical religious and social framework. He condemned the practice of child marriage and the mistreatment of widows. And he also highlighting the prevalence of child widows in society. He argued that if the Hindu Shastras did not support the idea of widow marriage, then new laws should be introduced to address this issue. He was a very strong advocate for the rights of widows and urged his contemporaries to critically study the Hindu scriptures to re-evaluate and reform the traditional practices that oppressed women, especially widows. His work was instrumental in bringing attention to the plight of widows in India and the need for social and legal reforms to improve their status. So Lokhidwadi's writings and activism also played a significant role in the broader social reform movement of that time, and which also sought to challenge and change regressive social and religious practices, especially those that disadvantaged women and marginalized groups. However, the social reform movement and mainly the progressive educationists were also criticized by the group of nationalists of that period. The nationalists who led, a group led by Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Chiplankar and others during 1881 and 1920 consistently opposed the establishment of girls' schools, the imparting of education to non-Brahmins, and implementing compulsory education to all. So nationalists also opposed several other social and educational reforms that were being proposed and implemented during that period. They viewed every reform as a threat to the concept of nationality. They believed that these reforms, including the eradication of caste system, would weaken the fabric of Indian society. The nationalists also argued that the institution of caste had historically been the foundation of Hindu society, and any attempt to undermine or abolish the caste system would undermine Hindu society as a whole. So, And these nationalists also strongly criticized social reformers, particularly Lokhitvadi and Mahatma Phule. They literally targeted Mahatma Phule, who advocated for the abolition of caste-based and gender-based inequalities. They labeled these reformers as traitors to the nation, indicating their strong opposition to those who sought to dismantle the caste system. So Chiplankar and his group, particularly Chiplankar himself, defended the rights of Brahmins as custodians of knowledge. He believed that Brahmins play a crucial role in preserving and transmitting traditional knowledge. So they have the every right to over the knowledge sources. Similarly, V.N. Mandalik, another nationalist, who was also a member of Viceroy's Executive Council, used his position to try and influence educational policies of the government in line with the nationalist views. Chiplankar also, further, went ahead and in his work Nibandhamala, he specifically criticized Jyotiba Phule's knowledge of Marathi grammar, implying that Phule lacked the necessary linguistic expertise to challenge traditional social structures. So, according to nationalists, women were not to be educated at all. Yes, women, along with Shudras, were traditionally denied the knowledge by sacred texts. So, the nationalists used two arguments to oppose women's education. Firstly, women are weak and hence should not be burdened with subjects which are beyond their powers to understand and waste their energies. So they also argued that teaching English to girls interfere in the natural aspect of a women's life. So they are completely against the women, education of women and also lower caste. Balgangadhar also, several times criticized reformers who are propagating education for women and lower caste, saying that kumbis, children of peasants, not necessarily, they will not get anything by learning history or geography. So he actually advocated for technical education for these peasants, and he also you know, uh, uh, so the second argument of these nationalists against women's education was that educated women would become immoral. If women get education, they will become immoral. And so these nationalists quoted several police reports and random scandals in the country to prove evidence to their point, and they opposed the teaching of history, English, mathematics, and science to girls and suggested that high school girls should be taught Sanskrit, sanitation, and needlework, which is very helpful for their domestic life. It will help them in their domestic, leading a hygiene and good, domestic life. Instead of teaching and wasting energies of history and mathematics to girls is a waste of energy. And he also said that the girls' minds are very small and they cannot absorb such difficult subjects. So so they also declared that English education had de-womanizing impact on women and which denied them a happy worldly life. Otherwise, they are very happy. So it should be noted that nationalists' opposition to the implementation of compulsory education to women and lower castes was also rooted in the fear of losing age-old caste and gender privileges and the destruction of the intellectual aristocracy that had been carefully constructed and maintained since generations together. So, in this context, we will look at the arguments of feminist historians like Uma Chakravarti and Tanika Sarkar, who analyzed these fears in their works, and how schooling and how and why schooling women became major concern for middle class reformers of 19th century. Uma Chakravarti in fact explains in her essay Men, Women and the Embattled Families. So in this essay she explains that until colonial state identified the need for professional women in medical care and teaching to reach out larger female population, women's education was never considered as important. So until then, women were schooled under a traditional system called Stri Dharma Paddhati. Which is a Stri Dharma is a code of conduct for women which recommends a proper attitude towards her husband and to conduct religious and household chores dutifully, and obedience of women is one of the main principles, and also it is one of the it's a matter of principle to become a perfect wife. So women are expected to be obedient and subservient to their male counterparts, and also dutifully doing their religious and household chores. So without disturbing this old order of Stri Dharma, the middle class reformers gave a limited agency to women by making them social actors through education for a specific purpose. So, since the purpose of education for men and women served differently in this particular period, women were given special education which is suited to the nurturing qualities of elderly care, medical care, and child care. So, as a result, instead of empowering women, the education remained the core of the domestic ideology. So, another feminist historian, Tanika Sarkar, also discusses the historical evolution of schooling Bengali upper caste women and the politics of social reform movement in colonial Bengal, and she brings a critical analysis of schooling women in both Hindu and Muslim families in Bengal. So the fears about women and education are not only restricted to Hindu Orthodox families. So Sarkar says that even in Islam, the same fears were expressed with reference to education to women. So if you look at, but at the same time, despite of all the difficulties, despite of opposition, there are several women who actually came out and got education and stood out. Particularly women coming from upper caste and elite backgrounds like Pandit Ramabai, Rokia Begum, who actually made a significant contribution to education, gender and education. For example, if you look at Pandit Ramabai's case, Pandit Ramabai is one of the very few Indian women of her age who got education in Sanskrit, who was able to marry outcast, and who was able to choose a religion that she believed, and also one of the most controversial women in India. So, if you look at her case, unlike the other women educators like Anandibai Joshi, who was who became actually a role model for women's education in colonial times by going to abroad and studying medicine, and Anandibai never gave up her caste and traditions. Unlike Pandit Ramabai, Anandibai stood, even in US when she went to study medicine, she used to cook her own food and she used to maintain all ritual practices, because as a child wife of her husband, who wished to give education to his wife, she simply followed her husband's wish, and she does it. It was never clear that it never clearly came out that what was actually Anandi Bai's wish. Is she really interested in education? Was she really, wanted to go to US to study medicine? Or, what was her wish was never came out. It was her husband's wish who actually encouraged and who want to show off and who wants to raise his status by uh, giving education to his child wife. So, whereas Ramabai's case is completely different, and Ramabai stands out as a single woman. She participated in social reform movement, advocated women's rights, and lived her life according to her wish and will. And she was born in a Brahmin family, but her father, was unlike other Brahmin men of that time who used to treat women as a liability. Her father, in fact, taught her Sanskrit to his wife and also his daughter. Though girls used to be given in marriage at a very early age, like 8 or 9 years of the time. But Ramabai's father broke all the norms of then society. And when he started teaching his wife, he was abandoned by his fellow Brahmins and his family was boycotted by the villagers. But he never gave up his intention to give education to his wife and daughter. He took his wife and daughter with him and went to a forest and started living there, and he kept his daughter at home and educated her. This enabled Ramabai to escape from the rigid gender code, and her father, who used to live on continuous traveling by giving lectures on women's education. Wherever his father was going, the entire family used to accompany him. But when she lost her parents, Ramabai, you know, she continued her traveling with her younger brother and finally reached Calcutta University, where she got the title Pandita. So, according to her father's wish, to live an honorable life and serve the God, later she joined the social reform movement and advocated for women's education. She married to a lower caste Bengali lawyer, but he was died very soon after their marriage. Later, she moved to Pune with her daughter and started a Arya Women's Association for the education and empowerment of women. She left for England with her daughter in 1883 to study medicine, but was told that she could not become a doctor because of her increasing deafness. Ramabai was, facing this challenge. She was facing, ear problems. So that increasing deafness became a hurdle for her to become a doctor. Instead, so she enrolled in a teaching program at ladies' college and taught Marathi and Sanskrit there. From there, she straddled two worlds. She converted to Christianity and took the name Mary, which actually angered her Indian supporters. At the same time, she clashed with church officials also, having, when church officials she tried to humiliate her Indian dressing and her Indian way of talking. So she also, clashed with these church officials also, and she always maintained her Indian dressing when she was in abroad. So in the year 1882, the government of India had appointed a commission, that is Hunter Education Commission, that was to look into education in India. And Ramabai gave evidence before the commission suggesting that the teachers should be trained for their jobs and more women should be appointed by schools. She also demanded that there should be more women in the medical field for some treatments for women who require the presence of other women. So such was the impact of her evidences that her demands reached Queen Victoria, and immediately there were, necessary steps were taken to encourage women in medical care. And it also inspired later women's medical movement of Lord Dufferin. So What also needs to be mentioned is her wonderful speeches, on two resolutions of gender reform, wherein she's in that meeting when she was initially she chooses to remain silent until there was a pin drop silence in her audience, and then went on to say that. So, this is her words. It is not strange, my countrymen, that my voice is small. For you, you have never given a woman the chance to make her voice strong. So, not only were the resolution passed within the massive majority, but she literally captivated the attention of everyone sitting there. Her speeches were usually met with applause and standing ovation everywhere. So, her so, to raise funds for the same purpose, she also wrote a book, The High Caste Hindu Women, and was able to sell, 10,000 copies, at a time. It is important to point out here that her book highlighted Brahmanical patriarchy, especially in the region of Maharashtra. So, if you look at the entire process of women and education, it went several changes, and there was several discourses happened. Nationalists have their own argument, feminists have their own arguments, and social reformers have their own arguments. But what is very important here, and I want to bring it here, is Dr. Ambedkar's views on gender and education. What are Ambedkar's thoughts on women's education, and how important it is to look at Dr. Ambedkar's views, and also to understand the interconnection of gender and education. So, as we all know, Dr. Ambedkar's views are very important to understand the interconnection of gender and education. Despite of his theoretical and philosophical contribution to education, unfortunately, Dr. Ambedkar was never considered as an educationist by the mainstream education field. And according to and these philosophers were always like Radha Krishna, and there are several other mainstream Brahmin social reformers were seen as educationists, and Dr. Ambedkar's views were never taken into account in the mainstream educational discourse. So if you look at Dr. Ambedkar's views, Ambedkar viewed education as a weapon to fight against social inequalities. And through education, he believed that, and only through education, downtrodden will get emancipation. So, education has indeed been recognized as a powerful tool for liberation from oppressive structures, including the Hindu caste patriarchy in India. This perspective is closely associated with the work of Dr. Ambedkar, who is a prominent figure in Indian social reform movement and the architect of Indian Constitution. So, Dr. Ambedkar strongly advocated for the education of marginalized and oppressed communities, particularly Dalits. He believed that education would not only provide individuals with the means to escape the cycle of caste-based discrimination, but also play a crucial role in the broader transformation of Indian society. So, Ambedkar's vision of education was rooted in the idea of empowerment and the creation of a more just and egalitarian society. He understood that the hierarchical and discriminatory caste system is the main culprit, which kept Dalits and women, away from this, acquiring knowledge, and which had oppressed Dalits for centuries, and it could be challenged and dismantled through education. So by gaining knowledge and self-awareness, individuals from marginalized backgrounds could develop the confidence and skills necessary to demand their rights and challenge oppressive social norms. So Ambedkar also recognized the integral role of women in the struggle for liberation. He advocated for the education and empowerment of Dalit women, understanding that their active participation in the movement is crucial for its success. So, as we know, Dalit women were not only the victims of caste based discrimination but also potential agents of change. So, their education and mobilization as political actors were seen as essential components of the broader mission to reconstruct a new and a more egalitarian social order. So, Ambedkar believed that education is crucial for both women and men. This signifies a belief in gender equality when it comes to access to education. One of the main objectives of educating girls is to instill self respect in them. This implies that education empowers women, helps them gain confidence, and fosters a sense of self worth. As girls' education is part of a broader social vision that seeks to regenerate the entire society. Educating girls is not just about their personal development, but is also seen as a means to bring about positive changes in society as a whole. So, Ambedkar used the metaphor of a chariot with two wheels, which is called as chariot of progress in Indian society. So this metaphor is symbolic of the idea that societal progress is not limited to the household or domestic life, but should encompass broader aspects of society. So thus the idea that educating girls is a fundamental aspect of social transformation and that it contributes to the overall progress of society. So, in this unequal society, education plays a major role in bringing equal opportunities to all and helps in a large scale social mobility. However, this notion is shattered when the schools started acting as a reproductive model for the dominant ideologies that will reproduce the structure of inequality. So the schools function to reproduce and consolidate caste, class, and gender inequalities in India, which is a unfortunately it is a fact. So Indian society reflects in schools. So many social progressive education is felt that Indian society reflects in schools. Schools represent Indian society both literally and in symbolic terms. So in our society, boys learn to see girls as objects from the stereotyping of female and male characters, in school textbooks and stereotyping of personality on the basis of sex by school teachers, parents, and other members in society, and the informal conversations at home, which often refer to women as problem and girls as temporary property. So that is why very popular educationist like Krishna Kumar argues that the socialization of boys to men to be addressed seriously if we are concerned about gender equality. So progressive education is indeed often viewed education as a means of bringing about social change, a positive social change. So they emphasize the importance of schools in fostering critical thinking, individuality, and social awareness. So Krishna Kumar also contributes to the field of, not only the field of education, but also the psychology of children. So he has proposed several ideas in line with this progressive perspective. So his idea of schools playing the role of counter socializer in sex role learning suggests that schools should challenge and question traditional gender roles and stereotypes. Instead of perpetuating traditional gender norms, schools should encourage students to think critically about these roles and empower them to make informed choices about their identities, and roles in society. This approach can help break down the gender biases and promote gender equality. So, Kumar's suggestion that textbooks and other educational materials should offer images and symbols that motivate readers to explore their own struggles for identity rather than simply reciting pre established narratives aligned with progressive education philosophy. So, progressive educators advocate for student centered learning, where students actively engage with the content, ask questions, and relate it to their own lives. This approach can help students develop a deeper understanding of the material and encourage critical thinking and self reflection. So, these ideas align with the progressive education philosophy, which emphasizes the role of schools in promoting critical thinking, individuality, and social change. So his proposals highlights the importance of challenging traditional norms and encouraging students to explore their identities and experiences within the educational context. So if you look at the mainly if I go on talking about this, I really don't know whether you are following or not. Can we have a brief question hour and then we can go to the other part, or shall I continue?
Hello,
Yes.
ma'am. Yeah, I could not hear you, so I called you.
No, I'm asking, can we take a break, or can we, are there any questions? So,
Yeah. Usually it is like this that till 5 o'clock we'll continue. At the end of
okay.
the session, they will be asking queries.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah, yes.
So, if you look at the counter socialization, and what do you mean by counter socialization, and the socialization of boys and girls, if you look at particularly in schools, the textbooks, if you look at the textbooks, how the language of the textbooks, the pictures that are in representing in the textbooks are always very gendered. Always mother, women are always shown as doing domestic works, and men are going to office, or they are in some official work. So this kind of uh, you know um, representations, from the childhood, actually it gives a child a very different understanding of the societal norms. And if we can change this kind of you know um, representations, then a counter socialization is possible. And also inclusive education, which Krishna Kumar and other progressive social education is proposed. The inclusive education, and also oppressed pedagogy, pedagogy of the oppressed, which will look at the which will include a classroom, students who comes from different backgrounds, and a classroom without any hierarchies, and without any gender biases or caste biases. When we can form a classroom like that, then only a counter socialization is possible. So if you look at the the colonial education system in India, it played a complex role in relation to caste and gender inequalities, but the impact was mixed and indirect. And if you look at there are very positive um, and also negative impact on the colonial education system. So, what are these, positive and negative, aspects of colonial education. So the colonial education system did open up educational opportunities for a broader section of society, theoretically negating the traditional value premises that they need education to certain groups such as women and the Shudras. So as you know from generations of from the beginning, women and Shudras and Ati Shudras were kept away from education, and only with the introduction of modern education during colonial period, the Dalits and women are able to get education. So government schools in Thailand
Hello, Sujata ma'am. Hello.
Hello,
Hello,
you
ma'am.
are muted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Since I could not hear your voice, I called you, ma'am.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Will you on the video also for some time at least?
Okay, I'll if I turn on my video, no, the voice will further decrease. So that's why I turned off.
Did you log in through mobile or through something
Yeah,
else?
no, I am logging from mobile. That's it.
Okay, then carry on.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Rest of the people.
Participants, can you hear? I can hear, ma'am. So surely others also
Okay,
can.
okay. So, what I was trying to say is the colonial education system in India played a complex role in relation to caste and gender inequalities, but the impact was mixed and indirect, and there are both positive and negative impact when it comes to educational system that was advocated by colonial administrators. So what are the positive and negative impact that we are now discuss? So the colonial education system, it actually opened up educational opportunities for a broader section of society, theoretically negating the traditional value premises that they need education to certain groups like women and Shudras. So women and Shudras, for traditionally who are kept away from education, it only during a colonial period, women and downtrodden got this opportunity to education, to get modern education. So this can be seen as a historical change, and uh, and also missionary educational institutions were instrumental in challenging traditional norms and providing education to a more diverse group of students. So, giving education to diverse groups of students was possible through missionary educational institutions, and they often operated independently of the government system and were more open to accepting students from marginalized communities. Unlike government schools and elite schools, the missionary educational system welcomed students from irrespective of caste, class, and gender. So this is one of the very positive aspect of colonial educational system. So while government schools were theoretically open to all, it is true that the traditionally literate and more privileged castes often benefited the more from this system. So even though there are government schools and they were on paper they were open to all, but who got benefited by these government schools are again children coming from privileged castes and children coming from already traditionally literary group families. So these castes were better positioned to take advantage of the educational opportunities provided by the colonial administration. As a result, the benefits of education were not evenly distributed across society. So the negative aspect of this government education system that was put forward by colonial government was it was not equally distributed, and not all everybody got benefit from this uh, educational institution. So, despite the theoretical openness of education, the social dynamics of caste and gender persisted in various ways, and discrimination and social hierarchies continued to affect the experiences of students in the education system. Even if there were legal provisions against it, this meant that marginalized groups often faced hurdles and prejudices in their pursuit of education. So, it is important to note that while the colonial education system did not directly challenge caste and gender inequalities, it did contribute indirectly to social change. Over time, as more people from various backgrounds gained access to education, they could challenge traditional norms and inequalities, and education empowered individuals to question and seek changes in the social and caste structures, contributing to a gradual shift in society's values. So, if you look at, if you summarize the colonial education system in India, it provided some opportunities for marginalized groups, particularly through government schools and missionary institutions. However, it did not immediately eradicated caste and gender inequalities. Instead, it indirectly contributed to social change by enabling individuals from diverse backgrounds to access education and over time question traditional norms and seek greater equality. So after independence, with the constitutional guarantees, there were again, and also the setup of national education policies, and there was a tremendous increase in the enrollment of women and lower caste, with the given, affirmative actions by the constitution also. And there were, there are large number of women and downtrodden were able to access education. But unfortunately, even today, we have this the government has to give a call to beti padhao beti bachao kind of slogans, because there is a, after particularly after COVID, there is a tremendous decrease in the enrollment of girls, and also there is a tremendous increase in the child marriages in many parts of India. So this is really a very serious issue, and where actually we started. And if you look at the journey of 100 years, more than 100 years, the contributions of social reformers, the contributions of missionaries, the contributions of several other stakeholders, several charitable trusts, and also the government initiatives, still we are not able to achieve 100% literacy and also 100% equal opportunities for women and also for lower caste. So this is a one of the main serious issue that we actually need to discuss, and we can also open up the discussion on the under reasons, and also the suggestions, and also we can also have a reflection on the the recent NEP, which did not talk much about gender in a national in neither in curriculum nor in giving opportunities or giving encouragement to gender. So there is not much actually discussed in the new education policy. So I think I can stop here. Maybe we can. I hope you all followed what I said.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Ma'am, over, ma'am. Is it over? Is it over?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I want to listen.
Okay.
I want to take some questions, so
Yeah, sure,
maybe we can
ma'am.
have.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for your outstanding presentation on the topic History of Gender and Education in India. You have explained about social reform movement where women were not given opportunity for education in 19th and early 20th century. They considered education of women as a means of empowerment. And also you explained about Mahatma Phule, who focused on three levels of primary education, requirement of non-Brahmin teachers, and importance of women education. Also, Dr. Ambedkar's thought and views on education. And finally, you told about counter socialization, about government schools and the missionary education system, where it welcomed all kinds of all sectors of people. And ours is also missionary institution offering education for the rural girls that began in 1963. So thank you, ma'am, for your outstanding presentation. We are grateful to you for your availability to share your valuable thoughts and insights with us. Dear participants, we have come to the end of second day webinar. I request the participants to clarify your doubts and queries.
Oh,
Dear
one more point, ma'am.
participants,
Actually, coastal Andhra has several missionary educational institutions and contributed immensely for the education of downtrodden. So
yes,
it
yes, ma'am.
was
Most of the
really a
missionary institutions
tremendous
focused
contribution.
on. Yeah. Dear participants, please you can clarify your doubts and queries. You can ask or also you can post in the chat box your queries. Thank you, Rizwan. Yeah, Suresh. Suresh, can you ask your query? Suresh, raise your hand. Yeah, Suresh. Namaste.
I want to know maybe some of your responses on socialization of boys and girls in schools. Maybe some of you can reflect on that. That would be really nice.
So most of the
What needs to
participants
be
are
done?
giving, it was
What needs to be done for the
yeah,
socialization of boys and girls?
only education is the means for bringing the awareness. Only through education we can bring awareness. Ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, any of the participants having queries? Yeah, most of them are sending us some message in the chat box that it is a great presentation and highly informative, excellent presentation. So thanks to the organizers. So I hope there are no further questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody having participants, anybody having questions to ask?
Then no problem. They can also write to us if,
Yeah.
later. We can. I thought there will be an interaction, so that's why I thought
Yeah,
prepare for 1 hour.
last half an hour is meant for interaction,
Okay.
but
So no problem. So we can. It's really nice. Thank you so much.
it was good presentation, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any participant? Hope there are no further questions. Then we shall proceed to the last session of the day. I sincere thanks to God Almighty for His blessings and special thanks to Dr. Sister Teresa Magade, the correspondent and principal Dr. Shiny, the speaker of the day, Dr. Sujata Devarapalli, and all the participants for your valuable participation in second day of the national webinar. We would like to wind up this day with a few announcements to the participants. Feedback form is posted in chat box and WhatsApp group. All those who are attending the webinar and filling up the feedback every day will be receiving the e-certificate at the end of the webinar. Once again, I thank you all for making this day webinar very effective and successful. Hope to meet you all for the next day, the third day webinar tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so
Nice.
much.
Thank you
All
so much.
participants, thank you for listening.
Yeah, wait a minute, ma'am. This some Suresh is raising the hand but not able to ask question. Don't know the reason. I think 2 times he has raised the hand.
Maybe by mistake.
I mistake. Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you, dear participants, and thank you, ma'am, for your informative session.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
In